Welcome to Down the Road. We're going to talk about pot today. That's right. Should marijuana be legal? Representative Matt Ruby joins us. We'll get his take. I think you're going to find out why we asked him on, and I don't think it's going to surprise you. But there's more and more legislators like Matt, I should say, that are willing to have that conversation. That are willing to point out that hey, South Dakota got there. It's just a matter of time that North Dakota is going to get there. But there was, I think it's fair to say the word surprise the other night, because on this show, we have talked a lot about conversations, about communications, and about whether or not, as economic development comes through, period, in the state of North Dakota, we're doing a good job of communicating with people. I would argue that Grand Forks got awful surprised about the corn mill that's coming in, the wet corn mill. I would argue a lot that when it comes to Summit Carbon Solutions, what we're looking at is farmers that really were surprised. They didn't know that they were active in this whole thing. Well, there's many people who believe that same thing happened with the soy plant that's going in on the edge of Castleton. One of the big players, not just in the Castleton area, but in North Dakota as a whole, is Tharaldson Ethanol. We all know about ethanol. I think most of the people like me support ethanol, and we know what it does for the farm community, not to mention for me every time I put it in my tank. But Ryan Thorpe is the chief operating officer with Tharaldson Ethanol, and the soy plant, well, it affects them. And so let's bring him in and talk to him about it. Ryan, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Hey, good afternoon, Joel. Glad to be here.
I use the word surprised because as the debate was going on in Castleton, in the area, there was a talk about rezoning and how this all was going to work. And they got a letter, some might say right at decision time, from Tharaldson Ethanol, which in media, it was talked about as being a surprise. And so I want to give you an opportunity to, number one, talk about your letter, talk about what the letter was about and for, and number two, talk about whether or not you felt it was a surprise. Ryan.
Well, certainly. And again, I appreciate you letting me come on here and clarify. I did not want to write that letter. I've had multiple talks, multiple meetings with the CGP group. I let them know my concerns. We started a couple months ago, sat down with them for lengthy meetings and explained to them how detrimental it'll be for it to be right next door. We wouldn't have any problem at all if it was down the road 30, 40 miles. I'm all for the farmers. I realize that the same guys that grow my corn and bring it to me are also guys growing soybeans. And I'm all about value-added ag for North Dakota, keeping the dollars in the state. Ag is our number one industry in North Dakota, always has been, always will be. I just can't have them be right next door to me and put me at a disadvantage because we'd be competing for the same acres on that same circle, that same footprint. And I relayed all my concerns to them, and I came up with a solution, a plan, and how that it could work for them, it could work for us. It's like anything. It does take some capital, it takes some money, but I did come up with a solution, and I proposed that to them a couple weeks ago. And last week, we started an email train that said, hey, I just need to know where you guys stand because our first meeting is coming up next Monday, and where you stand on my proposal, and that'll tell me what side of the fence that I need to be on. And that was verbatim what I said to them on Friday, and I got a decline. They were just going to pass for right now and focus on the meetings. And so I waited on Monday as well, because again, I did not want to write that letter, but I did submit it about 3:30 in the afternoon to give them ample time to come to me and say, okay, let's work some more here on your solution.
So I use the word surprised. And most people, when they think about that letter and it comes before the individuals that have to decide the zoning and where this project is going in that immediate area, are going to use the word that you surprised them. And obviously your conversations with them show that there were concerns. And so I get to use that same word to talk about them doing that to you. Were you at Tharaldson Ethanol surprised when the site was named? Or did you know that that's where they were looking at before the site was named?
It's a great location because of the production of corn and soybeans in the area. It's, in my view, it's a little too close to town, because now you're basically right on the edge of city limits. You don't really want to put industrial facilities right next to residential houses. It never works out well, is why most of the time it's not allowed. But there's all kinds of locations that we could put this in. If you notice, the ethanol plants in North Dakota, we're all spread out. We don't have to go head to head for acres or compete for corn. Same thing. I don't know many processing plants in the country that are, literally side by side. And again, if it was 30, 40 miles down the road, it would have almost a zero impact on us, because it wouldn't be that identical circle that we're trying to compete for a feedstock.
Okay, but you say they're competing for feedstock, and you're saying, look, those same farmers raise soybeans that raise corn, but each one's a different product. And so we can have the debate in just a second. I don't think it's going to be much of a debate. But if this year on this quarter of land I raise soybeans, and the next year on this quarter of land, this same quarter, I raise corn, how does that compete with you?
Well, what it does, it's going to change that whole planting mix. So remember, there's also wheat in there. There's also sugar beets. There's also edible beans, barley. We can go up and down that whole gamut of crops that is grown there. All I'm saying is that it will increase my corn cost. It is going to drive the price up, because those acres are going to soybean production, because they will have a better basis than you typically see at a local elevator, because they're going to grind them right here in North Dakota versus shipping them out to the PNW and exporting them to some other country.
Not to mention the fact, I would add in all of that, is more and more farmers are raising corn on corn or soybeans on soybeans, which play into that as well, which again, I would guess drives the price up based upon what they see on a extended contract. You mentioned the fact that it's right on the edge of town. As you know, there has been people from Castleton that have raised those same concerns. Is Tharaldson Enterprise working with those citizens in Castleton that don't want it that close to town? Have you been in conversations with them?
So far, I have not. Yesterday, I had a bunch of phone calls. I have not talked to anyone there yet, just because, again, I did not want to write this letter, and I waited until 3:30 on Monday when it was apparent that they were not going to reach out to me and continue some conversations. So literally, this is my first go around then with the protest.
Okay, so in your letter, you mentioned a supermajority before this could take place, and you did that because of at the ethanol plant's opposition to the site. Can you possibly explain that? Can we take a look at why that matters? And folks, the letter was pretty clear on what the number of votes would need to be. And so, Ryan, in your letter, you said basically a supermajority. Why is that? Why do you think that needs to happen?
Well, it comes down to, I pulled that out of the state statute of if a certain, I believe it's 20% of the adjacent landowner, if it's one individual or one person, that you can protest a zoning change. Well, since that we weren't able to come to an agreement, unfortunately, I had to write this letter, and it cites that yes, you do need a 3/4 vote. And in this case, you'd need five of the six council members then to vote yes.
Do you know where the council members are going to vote? And I shouldn't say the council members, but do you know where two of them are going to fall when it comes to their vote? In other words, do you have enough votes to make sure it doesn't happen?
I do not know. No,
Okay.
I'm not aware. I've only had conversations, I think, with one individual personally, And I just wanted to, tell him my side of the story, and I have a voicemail to another one.
Okay. So did he give you any indication, that council member, of where the other one that you're going to have a conversation with lied?
Nope. He said he was still on the fence, just collecting all the information and the data ahead of next Monday's meeting.
Ryan, this business that you run is big, and it affects a lot of people. It affects a lot of people that raise corn in the surrounding area, but as you mentioned, they also raise soybeans. Are you getting feedback from them? Are you getting calls from those farmers that are clients of yours saying, "What are you doing?" or "Way to go"? One of the two.
Yes. I have some messages on my desk here that I got to call back again today. But yes, I understand, completely understand, because those guys that are growing soybeans also grow corn. And yes, they're asking me what I'm doing, and I explain my position to them. They don't really like it, but at the same time, we got the doors open here. I got to make a little bit of money to keep the lights on and pay the bills and pay the bank. And in the ethanol world, that's very difficult. It's feast or famine. There's times that we go years without making any money, and then we'll have a great month or a great quarter, and we're able to keep the lights on here. And so it's a struggle.
Yeah. Have you in any way, in proposing a different site, made an offer to help pay for the costs of that new site?
Well, what I had offered to them was, we have a bunch of land here. We could move it further from town to alleviate some of that noise, some of that smell, some of the railroad congestion, because we have a bunch of land that we own between us and the city. And so that was my proposal, is that they could move farther from town. In return, I would need some more storage for corn in the fall, so that I could capture more of my feedstock at a time at harvest when it's looking to get off the field. So that was my proposal to them. I own it's 4 or 5 different tracts of land between their proposed facility and our facility that would help get it further from town. And again, help with that noise, smell, distance. Like, between us and town is almost 2 miles. And that seems to be a large enough buffer zone that it's a place where everybody can get along. And that's what I proposed. Because again, I'm not against a processing plant. I'm just against one being right next door. And if it is next door, I have to do some things to make that compatible. And again, it takes capital, it takes money.
So, but you mentioned earlier that moving out further, as much as 30 miles, if I remember right in the number, would be ideal to what you're talking about. Now you're saying, look, we have some land, we can make this work collectively together, just some distance from town and still rail opportunity. I guess I have to ask, have you given up on it being further away?
No, not at all. Not at all. What Mr. Tharaldson has taught me in 16 years of being here is, hey, it's just business. It's nothing personal. We're always open to sit down and have a conversation. I would be more than happy to continue to do that and find a solution where we can all make this work, and we can have these extra dollars stay right here in North Dakota. Because again, I'm all for value-added ag, and I'm all for our farmers doing well here in the area.
Ryan, thanks. Thanks for making yourself available, and thanks for getting out and getting a chance to basically tell us Tharaldson's side when it comes to all of this. Thanks for coming on.